everybody, Howard here with double stops on guitar explained. And what I mean by that exactly is I'm going to show you what I consider to be some of the most basic double stops. They're very recognizable. We've all heard them in so many songs, right? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to find them on the fretboard, how to relate them to the chords that you might be using, and how to simply easily apply them to your playing, right? So that you can have fun with this stuff. And as a note, this lesson ties in rather nicely with my previous two lessons on using the major pentatonic scale. So I will definitely put a link to both of those in the description box below. It would be a good idea to watch those. You don't have to use what's in this lesson, but this is additional material, so it all goes together quite well. But this stuff stands on its own as well. Okay, so first of all, what is a double stop? A double stop is simply playing any two notes together at one time. And we're all familiar with that sound, right? So what I'm going to do right off the bat is I'm just going to play a musical example using what we're going to be covering in this lesson, and then I will show you exactly how to spot them on the fretboard, relate them to the chords that you're using, as I mentioned, and easily get this stuff into your playing, okay? So here we go. So before we get into working through the actual musical example, let's talk about how to find these double stops on the guitar very easily and how to apply them, okay? So I'm using four really simple chords: a G major, a B minor, a C major, and a D major. Four chords that you'll find in tons of songs, right? So how do you find the double stops that correlate with the chords? So first we have a G chord. So what you want to do to spot these double stops, the kind that we're using here, is you go to a G bar chord, okay? And right inside that G bar chord is the root of the whole double stop pattern, okay? So if you take all of your fingers away from the chord except for your second finger, you'll see that you're on the 4th fret on the G string. Now put your first finger on the 3rd fret on the E string, and you have what I call the root position of this pattern. Now you can play it a couple of ways. You can use hybrid picking, pick the G string with your pick, and simultaneously the E string with your second finger. You can also play them individually. You can also just mute the B string by laying your second finger lazily across the G string. That way you can just hit all three strings, the G, the B, and the first E. So there's several different ways that you can use them, right? But again, it all comes off of that G bar chord. So let me review that one more time. You have a G bar chord. Take all of your fingers away except the second one. So you'll be on the 4th fret on the G string, and then place your first finger on the 3rd fret on the E string. And the pattern moves like this. Okay? Slide your second finger up to the 5th fret on the G string, of course, and then your 3rd finger, your ring finger, is also at the 5th fret on the E string. And then take that up a whole step to the 7th fret, back if you like, and that's it. In some cases, especially with blues, you can use the 6th fret as well, and I will be covering that, how these apply to blues as well. But for now, so we've got a G chord, and finding the double stop off of the G bar chord we have. Okay. Then we have a B minor chord, and we will go through the whole exercise, but just showing you how to find these, because that's the most important thing, right? How do you find these off of major chords, and how do you find them off of minor chords, okay? So we've got a B minor, okay? Now again, if we resort to the bar chord up here, a B minor bar chord at the 7th fret, sorry about that, B minor chord at the 7th fret, okay? So it's the same idea, all right? Spot the 7th fret on the G string, that's where your index finger is. Spot the 7th fret on the G string, simply bar across the G, the B, and the first E, but we're not playing the B string, we're just playing the G and the E. So that's the root, what I call the root of a double stop off of a minor chord. Take that up a whole step, and then the same shape we had before, the root shape off of the G chord. So it's 10 on the E string and 11 on the G string. So now you know how to find a double stop off of a major chord and then off of a minor chord. Pretty simple, right? And you just use the bar chords as your foundation for finding them. Now there's different ways to find them, and I'll talk about that as well. But for now, that's kind of what we're working with, okay? Now the next chord in line was simply a C major, however you choose to play it, okay? Now if I wanted to find the double stops for that chord using the E and the G strings again, I would take that major shape up to the 8th fret for a C major chord. And I would find the double stops in the exact same way I did before off of the G. Remove all of your fingers except for the second one, which is now on the 9th fret on the G string, and then using that same shape, we place the first finger on the 8th fret on the E string, right? And then follow that same pattern. Right? But what I did was I actually played that an octave lower, and again, we'll go through the whole musical exercise, okay? So what I did was I played this again an octave lower. Okay? If you notice, it's the exact same shapes, but instead of using the first E string and the G string, I'm now using the B string and the D string. And how you play that off of a C chord, okay, the root of the chord is right there, and right there of course, but for our purposes, so think of that exact same pattern, the exact same shapes, but off of the B and the D strings. And of course you can play these any way you want to, which is kind of what we did as well, okay? So we'll get into that. But again, that's a way to find the double stops off of, for instance, a C chord in a standard position. And if you have a chord and you're not sure how to do that an octave lower, I'll cover that in some more advanced lessons later on. You can always resort to that bar chord. That's always a tried and true way to find them. And then you can use your ear, or if you know the fretboard reasonably well, you can say, oh, right, yeah, that's an E note and that's a C note. That's an E note and that's a C note. Or you can just use your ear. There's many different ways to do it, okay? And then, of course, the next chord was simply a D. Now, this is the exact same idea, but I want to talk about this a little bit. So again, just use that major bar chord shape, okay? Remove your fingers, except for the second one, and use that pattern again. Right? And what I did is I played those in reverse. And another one, as if you were going to a C, right? And that's the fun of this stuff. It sounds so musical no matter how you use it. You can run them in different directions. You can use just parts of them or the whole thing, whatever you want to do. So again, that's how you find them off of the major and the minor chords, okay? And then I think it's safe right now to just get into the musical example, except there's one more thing I want to mention. There's different ways to play double stops, and I'll be covering more in future lessons, but I want to clue you into a couple that I used here. The second time I went around to the B minor chord, I played played that, okay? So I'm using the B string and the G string together this time, right? So there isn't a string in between. These are major and minor thirds, which is essentially what the other ones are too, but no theory for today, okay? So how you do this is you take a B minor chord, and this would be how you find some cool double stops off of a B minor chord on the from the 5th string, okay? So what you do is you take a look at the chord, that note right there, okay? Again, you notice it's the same finger that I'm pivoting off of. That one kind of rules the chord, okay? So if you think about that, you've got the 3rd fret on the B string, and then you would lay this finger down on the 4th fret on the G string. And you can see that's all right inside the chord. But my suggestion would be to switch up your fingers, okay? That's how you find it, like that, 3rd fret, 4th fret. But use your first 2 fingers instead. Take that same shape, move it up a whole step, and then bar them both at the 7th fret, or however you want to play it. And then later on, I played at the tail end of the chord progression, and that was over a D chord, okay? So to find the equivalent of what we just did on the B minor, we go to a D bar chord off of the 5th string. And if you look at that finger right there, it's barring across the B string and the G string naturally, right? So take your first finger, place it on the G and the B string at that 7th fret. And again, it's coming off of that part of the chord. And we play this. So we're barring at the 7th fret. Then it's the 8th fret on the B string, the 9th fret on the G. Take that up a whole step, take it back. So now we know how to find double stops off of major and minor chords from the 6th string as well as the 5th. And these are tried and true patterns, right? You hear them in so many songs. Brown-Eyed Girl, the Beatles, Across the Universe, I Dig a Pony, you know, the list goes on and on and on. Wild Horses from the Stones, and they just sound great, all right? All right, so let's just work our way right through the actual musical example so you have something that you can practice and tie this stuff together. And then also I will explain each and every step of the way where it came from, even though you kind of know that now, but it's good to go through it with the actual example itself. So here we go. So the strumming pattern on all the chords will be exactly the same, just to keep things simple. That's it. Down, down, up, down. There you go, the first double stop pattern. So what I did was I strummed the chord, of course. Then placing my 2nd finger on the 2nd fret on the G string, I slid into that first double stop position. Then, pretty simple, right? But very effective. Then we went to the B minor chord. And again, citing the B minor chord at the 7th fret from the 6th string, I played the double stops we just covered, right? 7 and 7, 9, 10 and 11, back to 9 and 7. And you can finger these any way you want. Whatever is comfortable for you, that's the way to do it, okay? So here we go, both of those together. Okay, and then we moved to a C chord. Now again, what I used there was what we were talking about earlier. Just playing it an octave lower, but putting a little pizzazz into it, right? But you can see I'm just using the double stops, and that's the beauty of these. You can play them in so many different ways. You can slide in and out of them. You can play the notes simultaneously. You can separate them out. whatever you want to do. So again, on the C chord we have, and then we went to a D chord, and we spoke about that one earlier, but that is worth going over. So again, just really emphasizing that. Find that D bar chord, and I just played the pattern backwards. Okay, so for the first go around, this is what we have then, and I'll play this nice and slow. Pretty simple and very effective, okay? So let's do the second go around then. The second go around, of course, the same chord progression, but I played this. So this is a bit of that major pentatonic lesson I mentioned, just a very brief part of it, right? So what I did again was I grabbed the G string with my second finger at the second fret and slid all the way up to the 7th fret. So I'm visualizing this pattern in reverse. Okay, so I slid all the way up to the 7th fret, 7th fret on the E string, down to the 5th fret, and then as if I'm going for this double stop, the root position I call it, then I went. So you can see everything is right inside that chord, and again, a lot of that type of thing was covered in the pentatonic lessons. But again, nice and slow. Okay, and then we're on to the B minor chord, of course, and I played this. And I just covered that as well, but again, it's coming off of that B minor chord, finding that shape, or if you want to bar it. And then we move to the C chord, of course. And again, I'm visualizing this right off of the 8th fret bar chord, and I'm just playing it backwards again. And again, that is the beauty of these. You can play them in any direction you want. You can combine them together any way you want, and it's always going to sound really good. And then, of course, we go to the D again, and I played this. Okay, so what I did there, if you remember when I spoke about playing off of the C chord, okay, if you can visualize, say, a D chord up here, it's the same pattern. That is, again, the beauty of this stuff. And that's what I really want to emphasize. You don't have to play exactly what I'm playing, although I think the musical example will really help you. But I want you to be able to do this yourself, you know, to just get this stuff in your back pocket, combine it with the major pentatonic stuff, and you're flying, right? It's really simple, and anybody can do it. Honestly, anybody can do it. So anyway, I played right off of the D. And as mentioned earlier, if you think of a D bar chord off of the 5th string, but I played it backwards. So this one was ascending, and this one is descending. So let me take you through the whole musical example, but nice and slow, okay? So there you go with double stops on the guitar, hopefully explained, and how to find them on the fretboard quickly and easily, how to relate them to the chords you might be playing, and most importantly, how to get it into your own playing and have fun with it, okay? And again, if you haven't seen the pentatonic lessons, there's links in the description box below, because all of this stuff ties in really, really nicely together, okay? Thanks for watching, and all the best to everyone, and I shall see you in the next video. Hey everybody, Howard here with expanding double stops on guitar, explaining how you use them. This is sort of part 2, so if you haven't seen part 1, I'll still review how to find them. But as promised in the previous video, what I want to do with this one is show you how to apply them to some basic 12-bar blues, okay? So I'll be doing a 12-bar blues in A, based around A7, D7, and E7. But I'll be using a straight-ahead boogie pattern. But I'm going to blatantly insert these double stops into a 12-bar blues pattern using that boogie pattern, okay? This is just a visual, if you will, example of where to put them and how they work, but I'm going to explain it all. We'll go into detail, and I'll even add some extras to it as well, okay? So let me do the musical example, the blatant musical example, and then we'll get right to it, okay? So let's get right to it. We've got a 1-4-5 progression in A. So we've got A. The 4 chord is D, of course. And the 5 chord is E. So that's based on 3 simple chords, an A7, a D7, and an E7. For the sake of simplicity, okay? So you've got a set of double stops that goes with each of those chords, okay? And they fit perfectly with those chords. So this is how you find them, as explained in my previous lesson on double stops, but I'll do it again here for those who maybe haven't seen that video. So if we look at the A7 chord, and we lift off all of our fingers except for the second one, you'll see that we're on the 6th fret on the G string, and that note, of course, is the major third of the chord. Now take your first finger and place it on the 5th fret on the first E string. Okay, you can play those notes together by using hybrid picking. You can play them individually. You can mute the B string out by laying this finger a little lazily across the G string. And you can just sweep across all 3 strings. But that is what I call the anchor, or the root position of finding these double stops. So you have double stops that ascend, they go higher in pitch, and double stops that descend. And these descend ones are the ones that sound particularly good with blues and country music, so I didn't cover them in the previous lesson. So again, this is how you find the root of your double stop movement. So your descending ones move like so. Go down a whole step to 4 and 3, then 2 and 2, and then finally open. So as you can hear, they're pretty effective, right? So as I said, you have ones that descend and ones that ascend. And the ones that ascend start the same way. It's the same spot. That's why I call it kind of the anchor spot. So you start with 5 and 6 again, 5 on the E string, 6 on the G string, and we play like this. Then place both of them in the 7th fret, same strings, 8th fret, 9th fret. And you can leave that 8th fret one in or out. It's up to you, but it does sound particularly good with blues. Right? So you can be playing that boogie pattern like what I was doing. You can see I played the descending pattern first, and followed by the ascending pattern. And you can see I'm just applying some sliding and stuff, just whatever you can do to make it sound colorful. Anything you want is going to sound pretty good. So you can see that I used the ascending one because I'm going to the 4 chord now, which is D, and that's particularly effective, right? And that takes us right to the D. So let me play all of that again, and then we'll talk about the double stops on the D. To the D chord, and we want to find the double stops for the D chord in the exact same way as we did for the A chord. Okay, so we want to take that shape, that A7 shape, all the way up to the 10th fret for a D7 chord, and we use the exact same pattern to figure this out. Remove all your fingers except your second one, and you'll be on the 11th fret on the G string, and then we want the first fret, or excuse me, the first string at the 10th fret. Take that down a whole step, then 7 and 7, and then replacing the open strings with 5 and 5. And of course, if you wanted to, you could use the ascending pattern by playing 11 and 10, 12 and 12, 13 and 13, and 14 and 14. The choice is yours. Either one's going to sound pretty great, right? So let's go over all that again. Went back to A as typical 1-4-5 blues progression. Now let's talk about what I did on the E, okay? So we go to the 5 chord, which is E, and we could find the double stops the exact same way. We could go all the way up to the 12th fret, and we could do that. Or we could do... But what's really cool and a lot of fun is to combine these double stops across different strings. We're using so far the first E string and the G string, but let's do it with the B string and the D string. You can see the shapes are exactly the same. It's just a matter of where do you find them, okay? Well, this is how you find them, an easy way to find them off of the B and the D strings, okay? If you know the shape of a C7 chord, okay, that's a standard C chord with your pinky added to the 3rd fret on the G string. That's a movable shape, right? So that would be a C chord, so you could play this. You can see it's the exact same pattern, just different strings. It gives you an octave away down here. So if we take that shape and we move it to the 5th fret for a D7 chord, we can find our double stops there. Same thing for an E7 chord. Or, it's so easy, right? It's just based right off of those simple chord shapes. So what I did on the E was I envisioned that shape, an E7, and I played... And then I moved it all down to D. So this is really fun stuff to get into your playing, and it's really, really easy to do. You just want to remember how to find the double stops. So off of your 6-string 7th chords, it's always like this. Or, no matter where you're playing, you want to do it off of a G chord. You want to do it off of a B chord. shapes are always the same. You just use the chord to find it. And after a while, you get to sort of memorize where those chords are on the fretboard, and it becomes pretty easy. So again, if I wanted to do it off of a G7 chord played at the 10th fret using that C7 shape, or again. So it's really quite simple, and once again, all you got to do is just use a couple of different shapes for the dominant 7th chords, and you can find these double stops all the way across the first 4 strings on the guitar. So let's talk about a few other double stops just for fun, okay? So again, if we're playing a blues in A, there's some cool little double stop patterns that I'll share with you that you can use. So if you know your blues scale or your minor pentatonic, it's all right inside that, okay? So I won't get into the theory too much about it, but knowing your chord inversions is really good. Those are all A7 chords, but I won't go there just yet, okay? So just know that off of that A7 chord, you can play this very cool double stop. That's how you find it. So I played 7 on the D string, 5 on the G, 7 on the G, and then finally targeting 9 on the G string and adding the 8th fret on the B string to that. And you can slide into it from a half step, a whole step, whatever you want to do. But it's always going to sound great. It's a great little double stop pattern. It with the other double stops to add even more flavor to the picture, okay? Now when you go to the D chord, the D7, again, you're just targeting the chord really. So right there I'm just barring across the G string and the B string and sliding to the 7th fret. Again, you can do half steps if you want to, but that's going to get you inside the D chord. Right? So now you can combine those together. Same thing for the E chord. Just think of it as being on the 9th fret instead of the 7th. Back to the D chord. Just a little something extra that you can add to your playing, and it's pretty standard blues and blues rock stuff, right? What's really cool is you can combine these together, as I keep saying. You can play stuff like that, right into stuff like that, and you can just go for days. And once again, it's just memorizing the patterns, which is really easy to do just off of 2 simple chord shapes. Okay, there you go with double stops on guitar explained part 2, the blues connection. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and if you're interested in supporting the channel, you can use the super thanks button below, or you can become a member of 24/7 Guitar. It's a penny shy of $5 a month, and it helps support the channel. And so there you go. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you guys in the next video.